Welcome, everyone. We're diving into a pretty provocative idea. What if the Jesus we know as the peacemaker never existed as such, but was, actually a revolutionary figure?
That's a bold claim. So, you're saying, instead of the gentle healer, we're talking about a militant, politically engaged guy?
Exactly. And researcher Robert Eisenman argues just that. He suggests that, Jesus was not the passive, meek character we typically imagine, but rather, he was a
Right.
radical, revolutionary threat to the Roman Empire.
Wow. That's like flipping the entire narrative on its head. It almost sounds like a script out of an action movie. Jesus the warrior.
Yeah, it's quite something. Eisenman points out that first-century Judea was a brutal, occupied territory under Roman control, where tensions were, simmering on the edge of rebellion.
And in this volatile atmosphere, any claim like the kingdom of God is at hand would carry a political punch, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just theology. It was a statement loaded with revolutionary
Yeah.
potential. Imagine preaching that the kingdom of God is not just in heaven, but coming to earth to overthrow injustice.
So let me get this straight. Eisenman argues that Jesus was deeply embedded in the resistance movements of the time?
Right. He highlights that groups like the Zealots and Sicarii, who actively fought Roman rule, were struggling alongside the more complacent temple elites who collaborated with the occupiers.
That's a fascinating context. But what evidence does Eisenman bring to the table for this revolutionary image?
Well, check this out. He draws attention to the language in the Gospels. Phrases like, "I have not come to bring peace but a sword," clearly hint at, a call for conflict rather than mere spiritual calm.
Yeah, that phrase definitely raises eyebrows. It makes you think, was Jesus in a way inviting conflict instead of avoiding it?
Exactly. And then there's the title Messiah. Originally, that term was intended to denote a warrior king, not a suffering servant. Think David, not a gentle lamb.
Right, I mean, historically a Messiah was expected to defeat foes and restore a kingdom. But isn't there a strong tradition of interpreting those texts metaphorically?
True, there's always been debate, but Eisenman suggests that the historical record, including Jesus' actions, like that temple incident where he overturned the money changers' tables, reflects more than just symbolic protest. He views it as a deliberate act of rebellion against economic exploitation and religious corruption.
So, you're saying that this dramatic temple scene, often seen as a moment of righteous indignation, might have been, an outright act of sedition?
Precisely. In the eyes of the Roman authorities, such an act was classic insurrection, not a mere cleansing of temple practices.
That definitely challenges the usual peaceful portrayal. But, how does Eisenman reconcile this with the evolution of the early Christian message after Jesus' death?
Good question. After Jesus' execution, likely for his perceived rebellion, his brother James took over a movement that maintained this apocalyptic, anti-Roman fervor.
Yeah, interesting point.
Later, however, Paul stepped in with a new, gentler portrayal that was more acceptable to the Roman world.
So, in a sense, the early narrative had to be sanitized to, fit the political climate and avoid provoking further backlash from Rome?
Exactly. Eisenman makes the point that our current image of a meek, peaceful Jesus was, in part, a constructed myth, a deliberate transformation to distance the figure from his original militant roots.
I see. But couldn't one argue that this revision was simply a natural evolution of his teachings, rather than censorship?
That's a valid counterpoint. I mean, it is possible that as the movement spread, spiritual interpretations naturally overshadowed the politically charged origins. However, Eisenman contends that the dramatic changes, including even the portrayal of figures like Barabbas, hint at intentional editing.
Barabbas. Now that's a puzzling element. The fact that his full name in some texts is Jesus Bar Abbas, meaning Jesus, son of the Father, almost suggests a splitting of identities, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's as if there were two sides to the same revolutionary coin, one dangerous and one sanitized for broader acceptance. It really makes you think about how narratives are shaped by political necessity.
And what about his inner circle? Simon the Zealot, Judas Iscariot, James the Just. They all seem to reflect that resistant spirit, right?
Yes, definitely. Simon's very name suggests a link with militant activism, and Judas's connection to the Sicarii, those dagger-wielding fighters, adds another layer. James, so radical that even Josephus noted his execution, rounds out this picture of a movement that was very much on the front lines of, anti-occupational revolt.
Right, that's compelling. It really paints a picture of a historical Jesus who was deeply political. But I wonder, isn't it possible that these elements have been overinterpreted or decontextualized over time?
That's a fair critique. While Eisenman's thesis is provocative and forces us to re-examine the evidence, some scholars argue that the texts are complex and multi-layered, not confined to a single reading.
So, while his arguments are thought-provoking, they might, not be the final word in understanding the historical figure?
Exactly. It opens a debate, one that challenges the comfortable image we've been given, but also invites us to consider the messy historical context of first-century Judea.
Indeed. And then there's the radical shift brought by Paul and the later gospel writers. He essentially transformed this militant icon into the universal Christ we know today.
Right. Paul's reinterpretation was crucial. It allowed the message to transcend ethnic and political boundaries, aligning it more with a spiritual salvation narrative rather than a call for revolution.
It's almost like, taking a raw, fiery message and tempering it down for mass appeal.
Absolutely. And it begs the question, was the original Jesus crucified as an insurrectionist, a rebel against an empire, only to later be canonized as, well, a symbol of peace?
That's the haunting question, isn't it? How much of what we believe was shaped by the need to make peace with an oppressive regime?
Indeed. It suggests that our understanding of religious history is, in large part, a product of political power struggles and narrative control, and it reminds us how history can be rewritten to suit the times.
It truly does. I mean, if history is so malleable, then who knows how many other truths about our past are hidden beneath layers of reinterpretation.
Exactly. Eisenman's work is a call to look deeper, to question the dominant narratives, and to consider alternative perspectives, even when they unsettle long-held beliefs.
Well, this discussion really opens our eyes to the complexities of historical storytelling. It's a reminder that the truth might be more radical than we think.